I can't exactly get myself to applaud stuff like this. I dig it that she opposes Sharia and sees it for the evil that it is. But what she's doing is also profane and evil. And in her stunt to defile this flag, she defiled herself. She could have made just as much of a desecrating statement while retaining her dignity by dropping some pork chops or a bucket of chitlins on this flag. Now, Beyonce is being promoted on the scene as the new face of feminism. I thought feminists wanted to be respected for their minds and not just be viewed as sex objects. Feminism. Who needs to do homework when you can twerk?
I think what's happening. Propaganda.
Speaking of feminists being respected for their minds, remember y'all, feminism goes back as far as Eve. Satan got in her head saying, "Don't you want to be respected for your mind?" He accused God for putting a glass ceiling over her head. Satan tapped into her feminine pride, and she got greedy. So greedy, fueled by pride, that she forgot that she was already created out of the image of God and already knew the best of God's knowledge. I already think feminists are nuts, and that's what this is, nuts. Feminists who follow their self-righteousness on down that path end up doing things like wearing tampons as earrings or wanting to make statements with menstrual blood, parading around in vagina costumes, etc. Now there's a paradox here. These women are supposed to be so proud of their femininity, yet try to use it to offend and shock people. I happen to think vagina is amazing and wonderful. And I think it's sad that feminists would use something as wonderful as the said female attribute to shock and offend people, being that they're supposed to be the biggest spokespersons for it. What sucks even more is that some people try to lump Christians in with the people this woman is targeting. A Christian such as myself has no respect for this, but I wouldn't think that she deserves to be tortured to death for it. She has nothing to fear from Christians, but she'll be considered brave for doing this in spite of Christians, even though she's protesting Sharia. And under Sharia, she would be killed for this. But somehow we Christians are just as bad as Hamas and ISIS. She's probably not gonna care if Christians are lumped in and seen as just as evil as Sharia. In her selfishness and her self-righteousness, she doesn't see how counterproductive her statement is. She just wants attention. She's angry at an insane level. And this is how she vents. She's probably in a lot of pain and has to let it out like a randomly tossed grenade. And she really doesn't care who it hurts. The methods of Islam are wrong, and these are the kind of conclusions Islam wants to avoid. They're afraid that if women aren't controlled, they'll end up doing stuff like this and will influence others. Well, stuff like this is kind of affirming to what they're afraid of and emboldens them to say, this is why we need to spread Sharia. I mean, would you want to see your daughter doing something like this for any reason? And I know there's some artsy-fartsy nuts out there who dig this kind of crap. No pun intended. Although they might find themselves very conflicted because it wouldn't be very PC if they didn't approve. Is it better to be brave and artsy-fartsy or PC? Brave and artsy-fartsy or PC? Oh, darn it. Why couldn't she have just crapped on a cross? But no matter what your faith or philosophy is, if you're a halfway well-adjusted human being, there should be nothing that would make you happy to see something reduce your kid to behave lower than a dog. She wasn't forced to do this. She volunteered to reduce herself to this obscenely low level. You really think she did this for the betterment of women or for the better treatment of women? Yeah, women deserve to be free from your ugly Sharia so we can do ugly things like poop and menstruate on things. Yeah, I guess showing some class is too much of a stretch, eh? But I crack up because somehow Christians are lumped in with the oppressive factions of Sharia, and somehow we want oppressive rule over our women when Jesus doesn't even teach that. As a Christian, my wife isn't mine to rule. My wife is mine to serve. What good is a king who doesn't serve? I am the first line of defense of her freedom. Her freedom isn't mine to give her, it's already God-given. Now the feminists may find themselves offended by this. Women don't need a man's protection. Well, then your cause is self-defeating because you're saying you don't want to be valued. Because what is valuable warrants protection. Protection comes with what is valued. And before feminists get all insecure about needing protection, I'll let y'all in on a little secret. Even God has protection. Cherubims are the guardians of his throne. He doesn't need them, but God is the perfect balance of majesty and humility. Although he has the power to close the universe in his fist, he still appoints cherubim as guardians. They're a symbol of God's vulnerability. If God thought he was all that, he wouldn't give you any indication of vulnerability. But in his humility, he does. So feminists, if God's not insecure about it as a male figure, why should you be insecure about it as a female? I'm Alfonso Rachel with Zone Nation, and I'm failing to see how feminism ultimately has ever been empowering to women at all. Nothing about this says empowerment. I understand she's lashing out under the oppression of her region, but we got women over here who have never experienced this kind of institutionalized oppression, and they try resorting to this kind of raunchy rhetoric. So I maintain that nothing about this says empowerment, or says nothing to celebrate being a woman. But I reckon this does. Happy, successful wives and mothers. I really hate having to contrast these women with the others I've shown. I can't help but feel it's kind of undignified. But feminism leads to misery, exacerbates oppression, and erodes dignity. Might I suggest a different approach and recommend checking out some insights from some friends of mine here. Who needs to do homework when you can twerk?